Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Phillies Talk Podcast presented by Team Toyota. Corey Seidman joined by Jim Salisbury. And Jim, as we sit down to record this, the Phillies' first two games of spring training are in the books. We saw Nola pitch in the spring home opener. We also saw some fireworks in that game from Matt Joyce, a non-roster invitee who's kind of fighting to make this team. Let's start with Joyce. Hit that loud home run, also made a really nice play in the field. We've discussed this a little bit so far, but the Phillies have several pretty productive non-roster invitee veterans on this roster, and Joyce is one of them.
Yeah, I think they have like four guys that are on non-roster minor league deals that I could see making the opening day roster if they can find a way to get them on the 40-man roster. And, you know, those things typically work themselves out over the course of 5 or 6 weeks of spring training. But, you know, when you're a non-roster guy, usually going to go in there right away and put your best foot forward. And, on Monday in that spring training home opener for the Phillies, Matt Joyce certainly did that. He's been a guy we've seen a lot of over the years in the NL East in Atlanta and Miami. Always a good stick off the bench. He's got some loft in that left-handed swing, so he's got a little bit of power. I remember him a couple of years ago in Atlanta hitting a big home run off the bench against the Phillies. And he's the type of player that a good team, you know, usually can find a spot for on their bench. It can really make you a better team because he gives you such a good at-bat off the bench. We saw that yesterday, hit, like as you said, a loud home run. He pulled it to right and then worked a 7-pitch walk in his final at-bat of the day. Grounded into a double play his first time up. But, you know, that's going to happen. It's you know, he ultimately had a very productive day at the plate and defensively makes a diving catch in right field to start a big double play behind another non-roster guy, Brandon Kintzler, who they were teammates last year in Miami. Kintzler had a very good year out of that bullpen with 12 saves. He's trying to make this team as a non-roster guy, and he's quite confident, obviously. Something you wrote about a week ago, how he turned down more money in Miami. I'm sorry, how he turned down a guaranteed major league deal in Miami for the chance to, you know, have the opportunity to make the Phillies and ultimately maybe make more money. So he's obviously very confident in his chances of making that team. Hector Rondon and Tony Watson are also non-roster guys that I think both relievers that I think, you know, they're going to really bear down on, take a real hard look at in camp, and maybe they end up on that roster. So they've, I think, done a really good job with their non-roster invites in bringing in guys who've had really good track records and possibly could end up on this ball club.
And when you say that's kind of a circumstance where this offseason kind of played into the Phillies' favor a little bit, you know, yeah. I wouldn't have thought that Brandon Kintzler and Tony Watson would have had to sign minor league deals this offseason. Archie Bradley actually said something similar earlier this week, that he was surprised those guys had to sign those non-guaranteed deals as well. I mean, in a normal year, they're probably getting, I don't know, 1 year, $3-4 million, right?
Yeah, probably. This was very abnormal year. You know, when you look at Jake Odorizzi's still out there, pretty good starting pitcher. There's some still good relievers that are out there, like Shane Green. So, yeah, I mean, obviously the pandemic hit revenues, and that had an effect on the free agent market. And especially, I guess you could say, an effect on, you know, those guys late in their careers hanging on, but still have some tread on their tire. But they're in a good spot at those three relievers because the Phillies need a lot of help, and I could see them pitching their way onto the team. You know, I think there are reasons why maybe they didn't get guaranteed deals in addition to the pandemic. I mean, you look at Kintzler's year last year, he walked some guys. He didn't strike out a lot of guys. Makes you scratch your head on how he did it, getting those 12 saves. But you know what? Like I always say, the only stat to me on a closer that really matters is handshakes, and he's got a lot of them. He got 12 of them. But I can see why front office would really dig in on those numbers, and maybe that would give some front offices pause. But he becomes a nice opportunity for you to take a look at in the month of March with the Phillies. Ditto for Tony Watson. There was some velocity drop last year over in San Francisco. But, I mean, you talk about track record. Tony Watson has a really good track record in his major league career from the left side, starting in Pittsburgh, going over there to San Francisco. So, you know, there might be a lot of reasons for a velocity drop last year. It was just a 2-month season. Who knows, you know, how guys had that build up during the hiatus when they came back. Relievers are usually slow to build arm strength. Some veteran reliever. There could be a reason for the velocity drop, and maybe it gets right back up where it was this year. So I think he's I think it's a smart pickup, given that track record, to take a look at, especially from the left side, for the Phillies to bring in here in the month of March. And so that's a nice little, storyline of camp. These four non-roster guys really bidding to make that roster. And I'm sure Joe Girardi's going to give them playing time, so they can make a good call there.
You mentioned the Tony Watson's, the dip in velocity last season. He went down from like 92-ish to around 90, though it was interesting that he was at 88 averaged in July. And then as the season went on, August and then September, it picked back up to like 90.5. So, yeah, that could have been a reason that he saw less of a market. Brandon Kinsler, he had the lowest batting average in all of baseball last season with runners on base. But that's the kind of thing that I would bet front offices look at and wonder, is that sustainable, rather than be just totally impressed by it, right?
Absolutely. And I think you have to look at that stuff if you're front office. You're irresponsible if you have that data and you don't dive into it and look at it and kind of talk about it, debate it, and try to extrapolate what it means. So, we have all these modern statistics and analytics and data and technology, and a big area that I think they're useful in is player procurement, especially guys north of 30, 31, 32. What do they have left? It's a really good way, I think, to take a look at how that player is trending and try to put a dollar sign on him to figure out ultimately his worth. And, the game this winter put a worth on those guys, put a value on those guys. It ended up being a minor league deal, but that doesn't mean that they can't come in here and have, be real good contributors for a Phillies team that needs help out in that bullpen and could need a lefty bat off the bench in Matt Joyce.
Yeah, think about the impact Greg Dobbs made, for example, like when he was here 2007, 08, that era. When I look at Matt Joyce, I see a guy who could have that sort of a year. I'm not saying the Phillies are going to go win the division or make the playoffs or anything like that, but last 5 seasons, Matt Joyce has an .818 OPS against right-handed pitching. He has an on-base percentage of nearly .370 as a pinch hitter. So that's a decent first bat off your bench, especially in a year when you're going to need pinch hitters. I mean, that kind of went by the wayside last year. There was the DH in the National League, so the Phillies really didn't have to focus on giving 2, 3, 4 pinch hit at-bats per game.
Great point. We still don't know if the DH is going to be dropped on us on like the eve of opening day or expanded playoffs were last year on the eve of opening day. Eventually there's going to be a DH, I think, definitely in 2022. We'll see about 2021. But like you said, that could create, with no DH, more pinch hitting opportunities. And Matt Joyce, he comes off, basically rolls out of winter and hits a bomb yesterday. And I'm not going to read too much into it. It's the second game of spring training. It's Florida. The ballparks are small. The wind's blowing out. Pitchers aren't nearly ready, right? But that said, he rolled out of winter and took a good swing, and I think that's a good sign for a bench player.
Well, Aaron Nola started that game in Clearwater on Monday, and he pitched 2 innings, and he used all of his pitches, which he said after the game is something that he doesn't ordinarily do. Usually he's just kind of early in spring looking for the feel of 1 or 2 of them, but he was using his full repertoire. What did you make of that? Why do you think Nola was trying to do that in this first start here?
Yeah, well, I actually asked him about that. He just said that he wanted to keep everything sharp. Usually veteran starters especially, when you're a young starter and you get a lot of eyeballs on you, get something to prove. I mean, they go out there and they try to dazzle right out of the gate. Veteran guy who's got some cred, he's working on things, getting his delivery in sync. He's kind of, breaking in his spikes, getting the feel of the mound again. Getting his mechanics down. And usually a veteran starter will come out there and that first time or two really focus on commanding the fastball, dotting that fastball, hitting that mirror with the fastball every time, slowly working in your other stuff. It just tells me he must have had some really he must have really ramped up in his bullpens a little bit coming into camp or pre-camp bullpen sessions. Must have had a number of them under his belt and really must have felt good where he could start really spinning the ball and mixing in that good changeup. So it tells me he's maybe a little bit ahead of where he usually is in terms of sharpening his repertoire, and he just wants to keep it that way. I see that as a good thing.
It's been pretty cool to watch Aaron Nola's evolution, not just on the field where he's, turned into a much better pitcher than I think a lot of people expected when he was drafted. He's also become one of the better strikeout pitchers in all of baseball, which he wasn't billed as when he came up, but also watching his evolution just in terms of like his personality and how he interacts with reporters. I mean, when he came up, he was very tight-lipped. Now, the few times we've had him this offseason and spring training, it stuck out to me that like he's cracking jokes, he's expanding on his points. He just seems like he's more comfortable in his own skin.
There you go. I mean, it's just maturity, getting a little bit older, building a rapport with the media, learning how to deal with the media. I think he's generally a low-key kind of guy, but he does have a pretty good wit down in there, deep down inside. I think he does show it to you now and then. One thing about Aaron Nola that always struck me from day one, I think he's a very bright guy. Very, very bright guy. I believe that's why, sometimes if he gets on a little, if he struggles a little bit, he's well equipped to pull himself out of it. He can really, I think, rely on his intellect to help him stay even keeled and pull out of things. I think he's a real student of pitching, a real student of the game. It was a very good draft pick in 2014, number 7 overall. I remember that draft well. They had really been scuffling record-wise. Their system was not in good shape. Their starting pitching depth was not in good shape at all. There was a lot of heat on the scouting department. I think that was Marty Wolliver's last draft. Ruben Amaro was the general manager, and Ruben will tell you that was, I guess, his last draft pick. No, I think Ruben was around 15. It was Marty's last draft pick, but Ruben will tell you he went down to Baton Rouge and saw every one of Nola's starts, and they were really on him that junior year down at LSU. And when you looked at him, he didn't light up the radar gun or things like that. But what you saw is a guy who was all pitcher, 100% pitcher, command. Move the ball, compete like the Dickens, and they thought he could be kind of a fast tracker to get to the big leagues, and they needed that. They needed guys to get to the big leagues and contribute right away, and he's been all of that. So really, really good draft pick. Sometimes I look at that draft and I think about Michael Conforto. I think went 10th in that draft, and I really like Michael Conforto. I think you do too. But I think the Phillies made a great pick at 7 in 2014 with Aaron Nola.
Well, Aaron Nola is now with his 5th pitching coach in 5 seasons, Cale Cottom, and he spoke a little bit about the rapport that he's built so far with Cottom. But this has been a topic that's come up every year with Nola because he's had so many different pitching coaches. Like, what of his comments compared or contrasted to things that you would have heard from Nola about previous pitching coaches like Brian Price?
Yeah, I thought Nola on Monday was very open in talking about his relationship with the new pitching coach. Cotham comes in with a real analytics bent, a real knowledge of technology. He embraces that. It's the new wave. Joe Girardi, I think, wanted a guy like that. But Nola flat out was very open in saying, technology stuff is not for me. But he has a lot of respect for the new pitching coach because doesn't try to jam it down your throat. He'll work with you in a style that fits your learning style. Nola's more old school and getting in the bullpen, side session and doing some real work, grinding it out, using his eyes, maybe using some video to look at some things in his delivery. And Cottom's all for all that. So he says he's bonded very nicely with him. And I think that's important because, I think they bonded very well with Brian Price last year. He was only here 1 year previously. I don't think they bonded very well with the pitching coach. I think some things were forced on them. It's up to the pitching coach to strike that balance and find out what works for the pupil and work within that. You gotta know your personnel, and it sounds like Cotham, only 33 years old, really has that maturity that he's not going to jam stuff down guys' throats. He's going to take what works for them and build around that what he can offer. Maybe he can offer that 1% to help a guy get better. It doesn't mean the team can't still use technology in evaluating a pitcher and maybe make suggestions, but it has to be done in a way where you're not sort of overwhelming the pitcher. And I'd say at this stage of his career, Aaron Nola kind of has reached that point of his career to me. I think he's a really good pitcher. He's had some struggles in September, but I think he's a terrific pitcher. And I do believe at this stage of his career, with the track record he is in the midst of assembling, he deserves to, the old keep doing what you're doing, Aaron.
Yeah. Yeah, and especially because Nola, his stuff is so good that when he's on, it doesn't necessarily matter who he's facing. When he has like his good breaking ball and his good two-seam fastball and with this four-seamer that all of a sudden the last couple of years is like, mid to high 90s with the changeup as well. When he has all that working, it doesn't matter if he's facing the Braves or the Yankees or whoever, or the Marlins. Aaron Nola just is that good. And it's interesting that like the Phillies' best offensive player, Bryce Harper, and their best pitcher, Aaron Nola, are both two guys who work off of feel, as opposed to like really digging in to all the advanced data and really killing themselves watching video. They just go out there and try to do what has always felt natural for them.
That's a great point. Harper is not a big video guy. He's a big getting in the indoor cage with his pitting coach and really working on things and going through his routine. Very much a feel guy. Almost like you want to see a catcher, almost like catchers used to call games. And I think they still do. A good catcher, they'll read what's working for that pitcher that night. They'll read the swings and how the hitter's reacting and be able to adjust the game plan midstream. That's because they have a feel for the game. And you still need that. You need that more than ever and more than anything. Every game has its own fingerprint. Every game is different. You need to have a feel for it, whether you're managing it or playing it. You can't just, it's not like reading music. You can prepare all you want and read that music. But when you go into the ball game, you have to have the ability to adjust and play by instinct and play, play the way that got you there. So, look, this is like the Hatfields and the McCoys, the analytics crowd versus the old school crowd. There's a place for both of them. But I think when that game starts, you better be able to have some feel. You better be able to adjust because you might not have your good fastball. Your bat might be slow that night. You might not be moving that well in the field. You might have a bug in your eye. I don't know. You always got to adjust, right? You got to use your instincts and play with some feel because that other guy might have a great fastball that night. You might have to figure out a way to quicken up your bat a little bit. There's always instinct is always going to play huge in this game.
Well, someone who had to make some adjustments last year was Andrew McCutchen coming off of an ACL tear. But right off the bat in Monday's game, he gets on base with a leadoff single, goes first to third on a Gene Segura hit. And, Andrew McCutchen didn't move great last year in the field or on the base paths. He didn't have the speed that he obviously had during like the prime of his career. But on that play, seemed to move pretty well from first to third. I know it's just one game. It's the first time he's advancing first to third. But did anything stick out to you in that regard?
Just the fact that he went first to third without any mental hesitation. It was a double to left, so he really wasn't going to be a candidate to score on the play. But just the fact that he sort of let it hang out and went first to third without any reservation. The thing that, and it's hard on TV, the thing that I think you really want to look at with McCutchen in the field and on the bases is how he slows down. That's where I really noticed it last year when he was kind of putting the brakes on. It looked like maybe something was grabbing, and that's where he got a little gimpy. And, when you're putting the brakes on, arriving at a ball in the outfield, that's where, quick, bang, bang comes into play. That's how you prevent the guy from taking the extra base with that, quick transition, that start, and then you get up, get your feet under you, get your balance, and deliver a good throw. So it looks like maybe he's moving a little bit better, and that would just seem to make some sense. Given another year to recover from that injury, he's a really important guy, and his wheels are going to be important because they're going to have to get him on the field so they can benefit from his offense. Because, like you mentioned earlier, it doesn't look like we're going to have that DH.
Hey Jim, when do you think Bryce Harper is going to make his spring training debut this season? The Phillies are back in Clearwater on Thursday and Friday. Both of those games are televised at 1 o'clock on NBC Sports Philadelphia Plus. Do you think Harper could play potentially in one of those games Thursday or Friday?
Well, you just said the magic words, Corey. Home game. Veteran players don't always like to get on the bus. So the magic words being home game and TV. I would say, would you say Friday, Saturday, or Thursday, Friday?
Thursday, Friday.
I would bet he gets in one of those games, maybe as DH, get him some at-bats. I think that's the priority to get him at some at-bats early, get his eyes working, get his hands working, get his timing down. He can get plenty of defensive work in pregame workouts over at the minor league complex, and then maybe start working him into the outfield during the next week. That would just kind of be my guess. I don't think they're in a rush to turn him loose. I just think they want to get him ready, get him enough reps, and get him on the field opening day. But he'll ramp it up as camp progresses, because obviously he wants to be ready, and he's a guy that likes to play. But I think the priority right now is ease him in defensively, and start getting his timing down. So I would say probably sometime end of the week, get him some at bats, and maybe we'll get to see him.
Well, in Harper's position of right field for the Phillies' third spring training game was Odubel Herrera, who got his first start of the spring, his first game that he's played with the Phillies in quite some time. In these first two games of spring training, we've seen Adam Hazley play center field, Roman Quinn play center field, Scott Kingery got a start there in game 3. Do you think that Herrera is going to get a lot of game action throughout spring training?
I don't know. I think it's quite possible. I mean, he is in the lineup in right field on Tuesday in Dunedin. Let's say he hits two gappers and stand-up cut pair, stand-up doubles, and looks really quick on the bases and plays well in right field. You don't think they're going to put him out there again? I think they will. So I think it depends on kind of how he performs. Like they've said, he's going to have to earn everything he gets. And as far as, his production and the way he plays in spring training, I think the bar is going to be set pretty high. We're going to see how hungry he is and how he looks. He didn't play much in 19, and before that, he wasn't very good when he did play for about a year and a half. So, and he's been off for close to 2 years. So I don't think it's a slam dunk that he goes out there and dazzles, but he's 29 years old. He's in good shape. If we're going to see where his skills are, and if they're still pretty good, I think he could go out there and play pretty well. And if he plays pretty well, I think they're going to keep putting him out there until they have to make a decision on him.
Well, that center field battle is one of 4 key competitions to keep an eye on during Phillies spring training. It's center field, the bench, the bullpen, and the back end of the starting rotation. And just another reminder that Thursday and Friday, when the Phillies are back home in Clearwater, both of those games will be televised on NBC Sports Philadelphia Plus at 1 o'clock. Phillies-Yankees Thursday, Phillies-Pirates on Friday. He's Jim Salisbury. I'm Corey Seidman. Thank you for listening to the Phillies Talk Podcast. We'll catch you later in the week.